Hi everyone, this is lesson 1.2. Okay, and in this lesson we are going to explore what were the aims and motivation of the big three powers, namely Britain, France and United States, who were the main countries who won World War One. And after that we're going to explore how and why they drafted the Treaty of Versailles in a certain way, and how the Germans reacted to the various terms in the treaty. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so just a quick recap. This is from last lesson. We did explore the two concepts, two questions on the causes of World War One and the impact of World War One. Please refer to the previous video if you want more information. Alright, so our aim today is you must at least be able to describe why the big three wanted certain terms in the TOV. They wanted to treat Germany in a certain way after the war, and you also maybe want to briefly understand, okay, what were the differences, the disagreements between the big three. Okay, alright, so just a very quick background. Okay, after the World War One, okay, the big three and many other countries on the winning side, they met at near Paris, okay, to attend this conference called the Paris Peace Conference. Okay, but the location is actually in near the Palace of Versailles. That's why the document, the treaty that they came out from this conference is also called the Treaty of Versailles. And I think Treaty of Versailles is more commonly remembered than actually Paris Peace Conference, but they refer to one is the event, one is the outcome. Alright? And their job is mainly to decide, okay, what happens to Germany and the other losers of World War One, and what are they going to do next. Alright? So if you look at a quick recap on World War One, basically what you need to notice is the impact of World War One. Okay, casualties are in the millions for most of the countries, but in particular you want to notice that France and Britain, they suffered a lot more casualties, 6 million, 3 million, compared to say the United States, who are on their ally but only suffer about 300,000. And this level of different level of casualty will go somewhere to explain why they wanted the terms to be a certain way, why some countries like France and Britain would rather punish Germany a bit more harshly, unlike the United States. One interesting to note is some people ask, okay, is the treaty fair later on? And you will notice that Germany and Austria-Hungary, the so-called opposing side, the Central Powers, okay, they also did not have a good time in World War One. They suffered a lot of casualties. Some of them you see Germany, 7 million, even more than France itself. But unfortunately, Germany lost the war, and usually the victors of the war, they get to decide a lot of the terms. They get to decide what happens to the losers. Okay, and Germany basically they sign an unconditional treaty, so they are no choice but to accept whatever terms are proposed by the winning team. Alright. So this is just a quick picture of the destruction at France, but I think we watched a lot of movies of the devastation around Europe. Alright, so many countries participated in this conference, but for your information, you probably need to only know the three of them. Okay, Britain, France and United States. It will be helpful for you to remember their names. Okay, for France we have Clemenceau. For USA we have President Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. For Britain we have David Lloyd George. Okay, so don't get mixed up. There's a George Clemenceau and a Lloyd George here. So try and remember the names properly. Alright? Because sometimes the names will appear in the sources and maybe the examiner won't tell you who the names refer to, and you're expected to know because this one is a basic information. Alright, so all three gentlemen wanted to prevent a devastating event like World War I from happening again. Okay, but they have different ideas on what must be done to make sure peace is ensured. Okay, so let's look at the first gentleman here. So we have France, okay, represented by George Clemenceau, the Prime Minister. Okay, he's nicknamed the Tiger for a reason, because you want to remember one thing about him. Okay, he is the harshest on Germany. He wanted Germany to really pay more than the other leaders. Okay, because France was devastated. The World War One front lines were basically near the France border. So France suffered a lot from the war, including damage to its land, casualties. Okay, so they really wanted Germany to pay, and Germany and France are also historical enemies, so they really want to weaken Germany and make sure Germany never have the ability nor ever want to try and attack France again. Unfortunately, we know history, it's quite sad. They ultimately failed and they were invaded once again in World War II, but that's for a later story. Right? So they wanted Germany to be blamed fully, right? Even though it's not exactly true, because we learned in the previous lesson that the wars sparked off with the assassination with country Austria-Hungary, Serbia, then Russia joined, then Germany joined a bit later. Okay, but they wanted Germany to be blamed because Germany was considered so-called the leader of the Central Power, the strongest among the Central Powers. Alright, and yeah, they have something against Germany and they wanted Germany to be blamed for the war. Why blame them for the war? Because when you are able to blame a country like Germany for the war, you have the reason to justification to impose very harsh terms. So the person that is the biggest culprit deserves the big punishment. That's why they want to first of all blame Germany. Alright, so weaken Germany military, and they want to destroy kind of Germany's economy also, so that weak Germany, a poor Germany will not have the ability or wealth to start a costly war. Alright, so next up we are looking at President Woodrow Wilson from the USA. Alright, so unlike France, okay, what you want to remember is he's the least harsh. Partly, we learned this just now, okay, because USA did not suffer as much, so it's logical that they do not see the need to punish Germany so much. The vengeance is not so strong, okay. But similarly, they do not want, he wants to create peace, okay, but he's also very cautious. He do not want to the USA to fight another war for the Europeans ever again, because they rather be doing their business, growing their economy, right? So Woodrow Wilson, instead of focusing on punishment and revenge, is focused on creating organization that can help to ensure peace, create peace on earth. And later you will learn, okay, the organization is called the League of Nations. Okay, it's the brainchild of Woodrow Wilson. Alright, so of the 14 points ultimately proposed by Woodrow Wilson, so he made 14 points at the Paris Peace Conference. Okay, and some of the key points he mentioned is, okay, disarmament. Not just Germany should be disarmed, but the other countries around the world, including USA, France, Britain themselves, even though they won the war, they proposed reducing their level of the military, because we learned that in the previous lesson. When countries have a strong military, build out their military, they are basically taking time bombs, right? So you want to reduce the risk by disarming most countries, okay? And we mentioned he wants to set a League of Nations where people can talk out any conflicts instead of resulting to war. Okay, last but not least, he's also very keen to give people the freedom to determine their own future. That's why we call it self-determination. What do I mean by that? It means you get to choose which country you belong to, who you want to be ruled by. Do you want to be ruled by country A, or will you want to break away from country A and join country B, or would you want to, either of the above option and create a new country C, for example? Alright. So the USA definitely not harsh because it did not suffer as much. Right? So wanted justice, not revenge. Okay, this is David Lloyd George, the Britain Prime Minister. So he's kind of maybe in the second harshest. Maybe you can remember that this way. So less harsh than France, but a bit more harsh than USA. Okay, so he wanted a bit of justice, but he do not want to destroy Germany. Okay, he suffered. His country suffered a lot during the World War I also, but not as much as France. Okay, so he's a bit more lenient, if you can say that. Okay, why do he want to pursue something harsh also? Because the people back in Britain also, they felt the cost of the war. Maybe they lost their loved ones, they lost their jobs. So they also pressure his government, the British government, that we do not want to let Germany off so easily. So I need to be able to do something to Germany. There must be some sort of punishment for Germany, some sort of revenge, but maybe not as much as what France wanted. Alright, so he's kind of a halfway point, okay, between Wilson and Clemenceau. Okay, halfway point. Okay, so he's also very concerned. Why? You might wonder, why not go all out like France? Excuse me. Why not go all out like France and cripple Germany? Okay, because Lloyd George is very concerned. If Germany is too weak, all right, a weak country usually is very vulnerable to communism. Okay, you will learn this in Sec 2 history and later on in chapter 2. Okay, communism basically is a system where basically, if I may summarize, right, they appeal to the poor. Why does communism appeal to the poor? Because they want equality. They want to create a society where everyone is equal. So there are no class differences, there are no rich, no poor, everyone is the same, everyone is governed, managed by the state. Alright, so Lloyd George, Clemenceau, Wilson, they are all what we call democracies. They belong to democratic countries. So they are ideologically very different from communism. They do not really like the idea of communism because they think it's very drastic, very extreme. So he's very concerned if we make Germany too poor, there will be too many poor people in Germany, and when you have too many poor people around, they get tempted to want to reorder their country. Maybe they want to say, hey, you know, let's scrape the existing Germany country as we know it. Let's create a new Germany based on communism. And he do not want that to happen. That's why he's a bit less harsh than Clemenceau of France. Okay. Now, unfortunately for Germany, losers usually don't get a lot of voice. Okay, they were not really invited to the negotiation. So basically, the victors decided Germany's fate. Okay, and remember, Germany kind of signed an unconditional surrender eventually. So they have to basically swallow whatever the Allies came up with. Alright. So for Germany, their main concern is they want to be treated fairly. They know they lost the war. They know they're going to be punished, but certainly they will not expect to be punished so severely. Okay, the punishment must be fair. Okay, and Germany was not in a very good place also because after the war, Germany suffered a lot of war. They had a change of government from a monarchy to a republic. Okay, the new government was not popular, and people felt like the government betrayed the country by agreeing to end the war and so-called surrendering. Okay, so the German government is really in a very bad position because nobody liked the German government. They were seen as traitors who surrendered, and worst of all, they will be the German government that actually signed the Treaty of Versailles, including some of the very harsh terms we will see later. Alright, so we done this as a group activity, so let's briefly recap what you all came up with. So France, you said, okay, very drastic things, you want to bomb, kill, make them pay. For Britain, you are interested in making Germany weaker, but you also want to save Germany a little bit, not totally destroy it. Very good points. For USA, they wanted to focus on building peace, maybe make Germany pay a little, but ultimately they are thinking long term. How can we create a safer, more peaceful world? Okay, so that's why they think of extra things like the League of Nations. Alright. Okay, so for this next part of the video, let's dwell more in depth into the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, so you need to know the main terms of the Treaty of Versailles, describe them, what the terms involve, try and know some of the numbers, remember some of the numbers, and you also need to explain how will this TOV impact Germany. How do Germans react to it? Will the Germans perceive it as being fair or justified or not? Alright? Okay, so this could be some of the big question. Okay. Yeah, so first of all, I need you to remember, previously in the causes of war, we had an acronym, okay, MANIA. So for the terms of TOV, they look like there's a lot of points, there's 6 points, okay, but you can remember it using the mnemonic war terms. Some of the terms are quite similar to one another, so when you write your essay next time, okay, you do not, maybe you might not want to write one paragraph based on just one. Maybe some of the terms you realize later, for example, like reparations and war gift clause, you can kind of explain it together also. So it's kind of up to you, but it's good to know that there are 6 terms to start with to help you remember the basic information of the treaty. Okay, then after that, when you're essay writing, we will leave it up to you. We leave it up to the teacher to guide you how to choose from these 6 points, alright, to answer your question. Okay, so first up, war gift clause, WAR, for war, the war terms. Okay, so first of all, I mentioned Germany is going to accept the full blame, and when you accept the full blame, you will accept whatever terms that will come after that. Alright, and the Germans, they hated this idea because they do not think they started World War One. Okay, remember we mentioned that it started with the assassination. Germany only came in slightly later. They felt that this treaty forcing them to take the base, basically what I call a diktat, a dictated peace. It's not it's a peace that's forced on them. Okay, the treaty is not fair. Okay, and they felt very betrayed by the fact that they are being made to accept this full blame. Okay, including the hatred towards the German government, because ultimately they are the one that signed it. Alright, so you see a source here which is part of your homework 1. Okay, number 2, T for the wartime, territorial reductions. Okay, so territorial reduction, okay, basically means the territories of Germany shrunk. Okay, this includes Germany's immediate territories as well as Germany's overseas colonies. Okay, so one territory you want to remember, for example, is the Rhineland. So the Rhineland, they became demilitarized. So basically Rhineland is this part here. Okay, basically they say, okay, you cannot bring in any form of soldiers or weaponry into this area. We want it to be a buffer zone between France and Germany, because we don't want the troops to be right at the border with France, because France is very scared after World War One. Okay, territories like Lorraine was returned to France. Saar was also given up and given to a little nation before. So basically Germany lost a lot of territories, including one very big chunk here at the side called the Polish corridor. The country basically got split into two here because they wanted Poland to have access to the ocean. Okay, so Germany, they forced Germany to give up this chunk here so that Poland can send people to have access to the sea here. So Germany got this part called East Prussia, kind of got split off from the mainland. Alright, so it also lost overseas colonies, including colonies in China, Africa. Okay, and there's this point. Okay, so they are also saying, okay, you will never be able to be good friends with Austria ever again. Okay, so Germany and Austria have culturally are quite similar. A lot of them, they speak the same language, but they wanted to make sure Germany is not a very big country, so they make sure there's at least Austria as a Germany. It's not one big country. Okay, but later you will learn that Hitler, who rose to power, one of the first few things he did in his quest for global conquest is to merge Austria and Germany back again. Right? So the Germans, like the war gift clause, basically they hated it. Okay, they think that by taking their territories away, you're making the country too weak. You want us to pay reparations, which we'll see later, but yet you still deprive us of the means to earn money through these territories. These territories might have valuable resources, agricultural land, factories, okay, population, okay, that can be used to help generate income, generate wealth that Germany can use to pay the allies. But you are taking us all these things away from us. So they felt very targeted, very singled out. Okay. The third point, E for establish of legal nations. So this was the one I mentioned by Woodrow Wilson. So to create a more lasting sort of peace, they proposed creating this organization called the League of Nations. Sometimes I will use the term LN for short. Okay. And fourth, okay, they wanted to, this is really one of the big part of the treaty. Okay, they wanted Germany to pay, okay, reparations to the winning sides, in particular to France, to Britain, because they suffered tremendously during the war. Okay, and we're looking at billions of gold Reichsmark. Reichsmark is the German currency then. Okay, so you see different figures because some of it is in dollars, some of it is Reichsmark. So the currency exchange, that's why there's a different figure. But you probably just need to remember one of them. Okay. Now, so pretty much all the terms of the TOB, Germany objected to reparation because they say this is too much. You are going to cripple us and destroy us. We suffered a lot in the war too. Why are you making us pay? Why is no one compensating us for the casualties we suffered in the war? But too bad, they're the losers, so they did not have a lot of bargaining power. Okay, M for military reduction. Okay, so a bit like territory reduction, but we are focused on military. So basically, Germany now is forced to have a smaller and weaker military. And the reason for this is obvious, because with a smaller military, you lose the ability to wage war on your neighbors like France and Britain. Alright? And some of the things they did, okay, maybe you want to remember the number is, okay, they reduced the army to 1,000 soldiers, which is really very small for a big country like Germany. Okay, they do not allow Germany to recruit any more soldiers beyond that. Okay, no conscription, no NS. Okay, they also lose a lot of tanks, aircraft. They cannot have advanced weapons like these things. For the Navy, they also have a quota on how big the Navy is, so they did not take away it completely, but they say, okay, you can have maximum 6 battleships, 6 cruisers, and so on. Okay, but same thing, advanced weapons like submarine, naval aircraft, they don't allow it. So basically, Germany is left with a very weak army, a very small navy, and basically zero air force. Alright. And of course, Germany felt humiliated because Germany has always been a very proud country, a very proud empire. But more practically speaking, if you take away a country's military, it loses its ability to defend itself, including from France. So there is no saying that one day France might not attack Germany, you know. And if that happens, Germany will be very defenseless and helpless. Alright. And within Germany itself, you need to have a bit of military to maintain order. Imagine a country without a strong army. Anyone who's unhappy with the government maybe can one day organize a rebellion and overthrow the government. So you need it for internal security also. Okay, and the last point, S for self-determination. So this is the S for the last point of the war terms. Okay, basically it's self-determination I mentioned is our people to determine which country they belong to. So how is this linked to Germany, you might ask? Okay, so for the many new countries that were created in Europe, for example, Austria-Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and all this, they were formed from the big empires in Germany, Austria-Hungary. So you can see it as a form of territorial reduction. Okay, it affected Germany because and Austria, of course, in the sense that its territories were carved up to form smaller countries like this. So basically, Germany will also be kind of against this because, yeah, you take away what used to be my territory and let them join other countries or form their own countries. Okay. All right. So needless to say, the Germans were very fed up, very upset, including one particular man, Adolf Hitler. This is him when he's younger, in his military uniform. He's wearing a military uniform because he took part in World War I as a regular soldier. So as a regular soldier, you can imagine you put in blood and sweat to fight it out, but in the end your country surrendered and is forced to accept all these very humiliating terms. You can imagine the impact it has on people like Hitler. Okay, we will learn more about him in chapter 3. Okay, so to conclude, most people will agree that the TOV is kind of unfair and too harsh because ultimately Germany also suffered in the war. It was not the full aggressor. It did not really started the war also. Okay, so many people resented, especially the Germans, of course, resented the TOV. Of course, if you ask someone like Clemenceau from France, they will have a different opinion. Okay, so when you write an essay next time, if they ask you is a TOV fair, you need to be able to probably argue both sides. Think of the perspective of Germany, think of the perspective of France, for example. Alright? And there are people who are worried that the TOV will create new problems, okay, which will go against the goal to create long-lasting peace. And history will prove that it's true. The treaty was too harsh. Most people hated it, created a lot of vengeance in the Germans, including Adolf Hitler, who one day will want to try and overthrow this treaty and put Germany on the war path again. Alright, so it's very tragic. Alright, okay, so Germany had no choice and the treaty was very harsh. Okay, alright, so that's it for chapter 1.2. In the next video, 1.3, we will focus more about the League of Nations. But if you want more information on the TOV, feel free to read out these pages of your textbook. Alright, so thank you for watching the video. I'll see you again.